Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Clear Vista Financial are not affiliated. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions.
You are listening to the Spend Life Well Show with Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice and Jesse Hamilton. Mark and Jesse are passionate about seeing you spend life well. If you want to save for and invest in the future, then this show is for you. Call now and join the conversation with your financial questions. 512-452-1120. 512-452-1120. Mark and Jesse will answer your questions and discuss practical financial principles based on a foundation of biblical wisdom. So if you're ready to quit worrying about your finances and begin to spend life well, then call 512-452-1120. And let's meet your host, Mark Trice and Jesse Hamilton.
Well, Psalm 62:10 says, "Don't make your living by extortion or put your hope in stealing. And if your wealth increases, don't make it the center of your life." Hi, I'm Certified Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice, and I want to welcome you to the Spend Life Well Show, where we apply biblical wisdom to your financial life. Now, this is a program that will take your calls and things. That number is 254-282-0495, 254-282-0495. And you can also contact us at radio@spendlifewell.com. That's radio@spendlifewell.com. That's our website here as well, that's spendlifewell.com. And today, folks, we've got a very special guest. Our topic today is around what do you need to know before you go and shop for a car, and the steps that you need to go through to prepare for buying a car. A lot of times people think that you just need to show up and buy something online these days, but we've got a special guest, Dennis Watson. Dennis is a loan officer at the Texas DPS Credit Union. That's the Texas Department of Public Safety Credit Union, just down the street from the Bridge Austin, there in North Austin. And Dennis, welcome to the Spend Life Well Show.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Glad to be here.
So Dennis and I have worked together in the past. In fact, Dennis, I think I bought a car with you one time a while back, and it's an interesting process. I think, we've all got war stories and things about going through a bad experience buying a car. And so, Dennis, what is it, if you had to say, if I'm getting ready to buy a car, what steps do I need to go through before I go talk to someone at a car dealership or try to buy one online?
What we always recommend is to go and get pre-approved with your bank or credit union. You can either apply online. In our situation, you can apply online. You can come in. You can over the phone. That way, you have that piece out of the way, and you're ready to go into the dealership, maybe with a pre-approval letter, and it just kind of speeds things up during the process.
Okay, so making sure you got the financing lined up if you're not going to pay cash. Make sure you got the financing lined up for that. How do I figure out how much I can afford for a car?
Well, only you know how much you can afford as far as the payment with your insurance and maintenance and everything else. If you want to drive a loan officer crazy, just call them up and say, how much can I borrow? We have no idea. What we do in that case, we ask people if they already shopped around, got some prices. That helps to have that out of the way. Go ahead and do that. Find out kind of what price range you're looking at. Some people don't know how much they need to borrow, so we'll kind of build it around their payment.
Okay.
Most people, yeah.
So that's real interesting. You kind of need to do a little research beforehand to see, what kind of car is going to fit your needs, right? I mean, I'd love to have a nice fancy sports car or a big giant jacked up pickup truck, but do I really need that? A lot of people focus a lot on the payment, right? Oh, how much can I really afford? How much can I pay? And then do their shopping on that. but really, I mean, you're right. They need to take a step back and figure out what it is that they really need to get from point A to point B. We'd like to have a lot of a nice, really nice car to drive around, but it really, when it comes down to it, it is about transportation from
Right.
from one place to the other. So I think that that's important to try to determine what that is.
And there again, you determine, do you really need a new car? You may want a used car, but your budget may be only for a used car. So we have some members that think they want a new car. They get sticker shock on the price, and when they quote the payment, they're like, well, wait a minute. And we recommend that they shop for something used. I mean,
Hmm.
for a while there, the used car supply had been down. Seemed like it's picking up now. We're still not out of the woods as far as the supply and as far as pricing goes. But like I said, you have to know how much you can afford and kind of scale back your expectations if you have to, if you
Okay.
want to, between a new car and a used car.
So you brought up an interesting point. I mean, it was almost such that the used cars were more expensive than the used cars there for a short period of time. And
Right.
that's not normal.
No.
This is certainly a different car buying market than we've seen in the past. But you're saying, are you starting to see those used car prices drop a little bit?
Depends on the vehicle. For trucks, no. I've seen dealers sell them at retail plus $2,000,
Uh-huh.
$3,000,
Oh, wow.
even on new vehicles. I don't know if you've been car shopping lately, especially for a truck. It's not uncommon to have to look at prices $75,000, $80,000. I had one
Wow.
the other day for $89,000.
Oh, that must have been nice.
Yeah.
So I
just
did,
told,
I
just told
what you
them never, make sure you pay it back, please.
right, and so I think it's interesting because I had a flat tire and the other day, and I took it to my dealership. I normally don't go to the dealership for everything, but it's just like 2 miles from my house. So I go down to the dealership, and they'd already been telling me I needed new tires anyway,
Mhm.
and so I had to get new tires, which weren't cheap because I do have a truck, and every time I go there, they always come out and try to buy my truck. And the money that they're offering me is more than I paid for it.
Mhm.
And I've owned it for 2 or 3 years.
That's a blessing and a curse. We've
Right.
had members that have taken up that offer. They've sold their vehicle, their truck, for a pretty good amount,
Yeah.
and only to realize, without shopping first, realize that the prices that they're having to pay to get another one, they should have asked for more when they sold their other truck.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So
So you got to be
um,
careful with that. Now, I've
yeah.
also heard of people, and you can tell the credit union maybe not be doing this. Folks, we're talking to Dennis Watson with the Texas DPS Credit Union. He's a loan officer. Dennis has helped me buy cars in the past and or do the financing for the cars in the past, and I thought it'd be a great guest on the show today. So I've heard of a number of financial institutions that are actually refinancing car notes.
Mhm.
Is that something that you're familiar with, or are you seeing that at the Texas DPS Credit Union?
With other lenders that historically would not refinance, I started seeing that more.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
That seems kind of risky, though, right? I mean, you're refinancing at the higher retail rate, which I think right now is really artificially inflated,
It
um,
is.
and that seems kind of a little bit dangerous.
That's why you need to be educated when you go into it. Check and see what your rate is. Make sure you know what your rate is. See what rate they're offering. Check with your loan officer. Make sure that it's worth it if it's going to go up a little bit. In our case, we do refinances all the time. Typically, we're able to save half a point, 2 points, sometimes more, and get the payments down a little bit. It's just a matter of knowing what you're paying and what you're getting into if you do refinance.
Okay. So as our listeners have heard, just in this first part of the show here, it's so important that you understand what you can afford
Mm.
and how that fits within your budget. You need to know that before you really start shopping for that car, because there's nothing more depressing, I guess, than you fall in love with a car and you get into the finance office at the dealership or wherever it may be and find out, oh, I can't afford that car,
Right.
and so that's uh, real depressing if you have to go through that. So understanding your financing options before you do that, before you shop, is so important. How much should folks be thinking about a down payment, as far as a down payment on a vehicle?
As much as you can afford.
Okay.
What you're looking at right now is prices being artificially inflated, supply and demand. Dealers know that they can get retail plus, and so they're really increasing the prices. The problem is, just like anything else, the housing market, whether it's furniture, computers, whatever, in a capital market, it's going to adjust, just like
Yeah.
the stock market.
Yeah.
So when's that going to happen? Next year, 2 years? Hard to say. The problem is if you buy a vehicle without putting money down and you loaned out, pretty much maxed out your loan to value, it's going to adjust to where 2 or 3 years from now, or when you get ready to trade it in, you're going to be so much far upside down. I tell members, put down as much as you can afford. If you don't have a down payment right now, save up a little while, kind of put the brakes on, and then put down as much as you can. And then once you financed it, go ahead and accelerate your payments. If you need to lock into a longer term, 72 months or 84,
You don't like the
you can do
84.
that.
That does seem like a long time to finance a car when you know you're
I
probably going to get a
remember,
new one.
I'm not saying how long I've been in banking, but I remember when the maximum term was 60 months.
Yeah.
We went to 72, and that was like, oh my gosh. And then 84,
84
we
months.
do
That's a
that.
long time.
But I tell members, if you're not putting money down or no trade in, lock in at 84, but pay it off in 72. Pay it off, pay extra.
Because you're instantly upside down. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
you're gonna end up still owing money, and
Right.
I unfortunately I see that, and there's a particular area in our listening area that where we have a lot of military service members, men and women,
Mhm.
and I think they get taken advantage of. I'm not trying to talk about any dealership or anything, but if you're going to a place that services a lot of military folks, just be careful and do your research beforehand. Make sure you understand the consequences of financing a car that far out. So Dennis, I'm going to throw you a question here, and you're gonna laugh when you hear where this financial advice came from. But there's a popular notion out there that is advising people on buying a car to put 20% down, finance no more than 4 years, and make sure that your car payment is no more than 10% of your monthly income. So it's a 24-10, 20% down, 4-year note, 10%, no more than 10% of your monthly income. Your car payment shouldn't be above that. Have you, how's that gel with you or jive with you when you hear that?
Well, if your income is, $6, $7, $10,000 a month, no problem. But I've heard that before. Don't know if that really applies with the price of vehicles right now.
Yeah.
20%, if you can do that, fantastic. If not, 10%. The 48 months, I think that's a little bit conservative. Probably 60, 66 months.
Okay.
Even 72. But
Well,
there again, accelerate your payments, pay it off.
You know where I got that, right? You may not know that financial advice came off of TikTok. So if it's on TikTok, it must be legit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But the guy has millions of views, so he must be doing something right. No, I agree with you. That's kind of a crude metric for doing that. But this particular show on TikTok, or this particular celebrity, I guess, is always showing expensive cars. So, you want a
Sure.
Porsche? Here's the Porsche. I love my Porsches. How much you need to be able to afford the Porsche. And by the way, for our listeners, I do not own a Porsche. Uh, but like I told Dennis earlier, I got a pickup because I needed to tote stuff around. But it's an interesting kind of see the dynamic, and we really haven't seen this. Well, really, Dennis. I mean, ever since you've been in the business, you haven't seen this wild, crazy
Hmm.
upswing in used car prices and a shortage of new cars. And
This is, yes, it's very unprecedented. I've never seen it. I've been in banking, I've been in lending for about 37 years, so I'm getting a little long in the tooth. But I've never seen this. You're right. It's all supply and demand. The problem is we've had very little supply last couple of years, but demand hasn't let up, at least in our little slice of the pie. We still have members supplying probably more so than we had before. I don't remember being this busy in the last couple of years. But
well, when we come back to in the next segment of the show, I want to talk about your credit score and how that impacts the cost of borrowing if you're going to borrow to purchase a car. And then we'll talk a little bit, folks, about how do you begin to go shop? You've talked to a lender to make sure you can what kind of car you can afford. What are some things that you can do to prepare for going and shopping? And Dennis, there's so many different options about how to buy a car. I mean, you can just buy it on the internet, have them deliver it to your house. I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist. I like to actually sit in the car to maybe test drive it to see how it feels. I'm a little bit of a tall guy, and there's certain vehicles that I'm going to hit my head every time I get in to that car, and no matter how low I lower the seat. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that, some tips you can think of. But when we come back, we'll talk about the credit score and how that impacts that. But Dennis, I want to make sure people know how to contact you. Folks can send an email. Now, this is the Texas DPS Credit Union, Department of Public Safety Credit Union. We have a branch office inside the credit union, but it's txdpscu at txdpscu.org. And you can just give Dennis a call, 512-452-5211 anytime. And I'll give those numbers out in just a moment again. But folks, you're listening to the Spend Life Well Show. I'm joined today by Dennis Watson. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back in just a few moments, and we'll continue our conversation. Welcome back to the Spend Life Well Show. I'm Certified Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice, and we've been talking about buying a car and the things you need to consider when you are considering financing that vehicle. I'm joined today by a loan expert for autos, Dennis. Dennis has joined us in the studio here, Dennis Watson. Dennis is with the Texas DPS Credit Union. And Dennis, you've been giving us some great tips here on how to think about and preparing for buying a car. So when we finished up the last segment, we were just about to talk about your credit score. Tell us, what our listeners need to know about their credit score and how that impacts the cost of borrowing and ultimately how much car we can afford.
Okay. Credit score is very vital. It takes a long time to build it up, but it can take a very short time to tear it down. What I recommend to members is to go ahead and pull a copy of your report. You're allowed to get a free report from each bureau every year. You do have to pay for your score, but you can do that through Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. Order a copy of your report, order the score as well to find out kind of where you're at. The problem is if you go through Credit Karma, you rely on some of these other agencies, they purchase a different version from the bureaus.
Oh.
They use Advantage 3.0, whereas we pull through Equifax. They use FICO. There's also Beacon, but what that scoring model does, it produces kind of a sweeter score. It doesn't take into consideration certain things like medical collections, maybe some old late pays, certain other things that a FICO score would pull through the bureau. So you come back with a little bit higher score. The other day I had a member call in who said her score was about 706.
Okay.
We pulled
Not
her
bad.
credit about 7. Do what?
Not bad. 706.
Yeah,
Not, I mean,
706.
not uber high, but not bad.
Sure. When we pulled it, it was about 626.
Oh, that's not so good.
And I've never seen it that big of a swing.
So that was
I asked
Credit
her-
Karma that she was pulling?
Credit Karma,
that from?
yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
And we see that advertised a lot.
Exactly. I've never seen it off that much. Sometimes I've seen it 5 points, 10 points, 15 points. Don't know what the situation was there. But I tell members, Credit Karma is good. They do serve a purpose. They do have other features, yet the score may not be quite accurate. So,
Okay. All right. Something good to remember.
Yeah.
I know we recommend folks to go to annualcreditreport.com.
yes.
Annualcreditreport.com. You can get all three credit bureaus reports. And I think, you can there request one of the agencies to produce your score.
Okay.
Last time I checked, it was like maybe $7 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. $7 to $12, somewhere in there. But now, if folks are members of the Texas DPS Credit Union, can they get that for free? Is that something that you all provide members, is to pull that credit score?
We're not a credit reporting agency, so we're not allowed to just pull credit
Yeah.
like that. You have to. It has to be in conjunction with an application.
Okay, so if somebody's applying for the loan, y'all will get that score anyway.
Exactly.
So it may be a good idea, folks, for you just to contact Dennis at the Texas DPS Credit Union. But before I forget, because I don't want to get away and have you leave today without letting us know. I know credit unions are different, and you referred to the term members a couple of different times. How do you become a member of a credit union?
Usually through organization, or if you work for someone that's in their field of membership. For instance, our field of membership primarily is DPS employees statewide. You can join if you're a family member with someone, or if you live within a 10-mile radius. If you live within a 5-county area, that's typically how you can join.
And you don't have to be connected to the DPS if you're living within that 5-county area. Yeah, so anyone can join.
Yeah,
that
the other
lives
way
in
to
that
join,
5-county.
if you're out of the Austin area,
Right.
Houston, Dallas, wherever, you can make a donation to the DPS museum.
Which is a great museum. They have a lot of cool stuff.
It is. So it's pretty much open membership.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So credit unions are a great place for people to do their banking. I'm always, because they're local, you get to know people. I mean, I've used Dennis a number of different times for auto loans and things, and Dennis always steers me right on that. You can contact Dennis at the Texas DPS Credit Union. Their website is just txdpscu.org, or if you just Google Texas DPS Credit Union, you can find that. Their local number is 512-452-5211. So, you're talking about the member, Dennis, about that had the score. Thought that it was over 700. Turned out it was 620. How does the credit score relate to the interest rate that they might have to pay on that auto loan?
The higher the score, the better the lower the rate.
Okay.
Sometimes it can vary 0.25%, maybe 0.75%, but
Okay.
In some cases, if it's below 600, you may be looking at 14.5 as opposed to 2.99. So it can make a huge difference.
That is a big difference. Yeah.
One of the things we like to do, say we have a member that applies, their credit score is fairly low, less 600 or less. We may be able to go ahead and help with the financing, but of course the rate's going to be higher, the payment's going to be higher.
Yeah.
We do offer internal refinances. If you make 6 payments, everything's okay, everything else being equal, you can always reapply later, see if your score's improved, and then we can see about doing a refinance.
Okay. All right.
It is a $150 fee, but that's one option that we have a lot of we help members with.
Because I guess what they're doing is they're actually building credit history with you all, and that helps them to maybe get a better loan rate down the road.
The other thing we like to do is counsel members if the score is low. We'll look at the credit score, credit report. It's a snapshot in time, and we'll say, okay, this is your situation. Pay this, get a copy of your report, find out items on there that shouldn't be on there. Maybe they've been paid, haven't been reported. Maybe you can go ahead and pay some of these items, small collections. Just give them advice on how to improve their score right then, so that if they get those things taken care of, takes 30, 60 days, however long for it to report, then reapply, and we'll take a look and see if your score's improved. Maybe you can get a better deal.
Okay, great. So we know we need to apply. We need to check our credit first, apply and talk to a loan officer at a financial institution. Now, one of the frustrating things that I've run into, Dennis, even when I've already got my financing pre-approved through my local credit union or bank, is I pick out the car, I've gone, and now I'm sitting in the financial guy's office at the dealership. And they do everything they can to try to keep me from using the loan that I've already been approved for. And what are some tips there for that that can help us kind of streamline our process through the financial guy's office at the dealership?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. What we're seeing a lot more of is members calling us, letting us know that the dealer has told them that they will not do outside financing. They'll only do their own financing.
Okay.
The reason they do that, there's with still COVID-related issues with them getting paid. It's taking a little bit longer for them to get their money from the lender because it's taking a while for them to get the title transfer and the sales tax receipt and everything they need to be paid. Instead of taking maybe 4 to 6 weeks, it's taking 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
So to avoid that, they go through their own lender, which whatever their processes must be streamlined. And so they're able to get paid sooner. We've told members in that case, tell them to show you on your contract. Where does it show that on my contracts? It's not there.
Yep.
You know, I don't know legally how they can get away with that. Don't really know that extent. It sounds fishy to me, but we tell them to stand their ground, to go ahead and try to persuade the dealer, or to go ahead and do their financing. Tell them they already have financing set up, and not let them sway you. But the problem we're getting is, well, we've got 3 or 4 of the customers that are ready to buy, which may be true, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
So in that case, what happens? They go ahead and do the financing with the dealer, maybe pay 2 or 3% more in some cases, and we just turn it into a refinance. Tell them we need to wait 2 or 3 weeks for it to show up at the other lender so that we can call and get a payoff. But we'll call and get a payoff, refinance the vehicle, and get them the better rate, if that's the only way the dealer's going to deal with them.
Right. I mean, and that's the financial office is also the place where, do you want the lifetime maintenance guarantee or the undercoating for coverage on your undercarriage? And if you don't live on the coast, you don't need that. New car sense extra and stuff like that. So, and there's a lot of memes on the internet, Dennis, of people being handcuffed in a cage. That they won't let them out until they agree to their terms. But generally the buyer is in control. They just want to really play upon your emotions in many ways. And then there's some great dealerships that are very professional in doing that. There's a lot that really that meme on the internet where you're sitting in a cage. That may be a little bit more true than not. So, you want to come in there, realize that they're going to appeal to your emotions. You've been going through this long process of trying to negotiate the price where they go and they go, well, I have to talk to my manager, and they go stand around and get some coffee and stuff for 5 minutes while you sweat it. And so now you've made the decision in the car, you've agreed on the purchase price, and now they try to upsell you on everything. Especially if you want a steering wheel or maybe a fourth wheel for your car. Well, those things cost extra. Yes, engine sold separately. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but know what your options are, and if it's a no-win situation when it comes to financing, do what Dennis just said. Get the loan, get your car, and then refinance it a few months later. Um, they don't like that because they want to make sure that they get their little bonus for financing the car through their dealership.
Right. They make their money off their products, their warranties, their gap. I've never seen. I mean, our gap coverage is about $499. Typically, I'll see from the dealer $800-900, sometimes $1,000 for the gap coverage.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Briefly explain what the gap coverage is. I bet a lot of listeners don't quite understand what that is.
Sure, it's guaranteed asset protection. What that does is it's not typically insurance. What that does in the event that something happens to you have a total loss, or if it's wrecked and totaled or stolen.
Okay.
And at time of loss, if insurance doesn't agree to pay off the entire balance, if they leave you the deficiency on the payoff, then you're responsible for that. If you have gap coverage, gap kicks in, pays off that remaining balance, wipes it out. That way, you're not responsible for something that's sitting in a junkyard.
Okay, so this is something to consider as a way to minimize your risk. Because, for example, as soon as you drive off the lot in that brand new car, it's worth 20% less than it was before you drive it off the lot. And so if you turn around, you owe a certain amount, and you're in an accident, the car is totaled, insurance is not going to cover the whole amount. The gap insurance will help make you whole in that situation. So
correct.
Always a good consideration to think about the different risks that are out there. And these are the types of things that a good lender will describe to you and help you be prepared for and make sure that you consider. It's not a gimmick to try to get to upsell you different things. It's just that's what good lenders do. They help you understand what your potential financial risks are out there, and then you can decide whether or not that's right for you. You know, Dennis, I was just thinking about, I went to, when I was younger, I went to go buy I was looking for a used car, and I walked on the lot, and of course as soon as they've got some type of heat seeking sensors or something at these car dealerships. And as soon as you do, they have a queue and they know who's supposed to go attack the next person on the lot. So
you got a target on your back.
I have a target on my back. I must have been wearing a pork chop hanging around my neck, and they were hungry. So I go in, or just on the lot, just walking around, and his first question out of his mouth was how much do you want to pay for a car? And so I like to have fun with the salespeople. So I just replied back and said, as much as I possibly can. I want to spend as much money as humanly possible. And I was looking at a used Volvo that wasn't worth more than $4,000, but at the time, it's like, yeah, these guys really they try to ask questions to kind of get you trapped into a situation. My advice, and Dennis, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My advice is to focus on the total cost of the car. Don't worry about whether you're financing. Act like you're going to pay cash for that, and then you can talk about a loan and all those different things. There's just so many different ways that they can that car dealers can get you, and they're not trying to be unscrupulous or anything, but it's just that's the way they think. So be careful about that. I want to make sure that people realize that. So Dennis, we're coming up at the end of our next segment here. I want to make sure people can contact you because you've given a lot of great advice today. So it's Dennis Watson with the Texas DPS Credit Union. You can reach him at 512-452-5211. That's 452-5211. And of course, you can contact Dennis by email as well at txdpscu@txdpscu.org. Dennis, I thank you so much for coming on the program today. I think we'll have to have you back on. I think what might be fun is next time that I go buy a car, you can counsel me before I go do anything or look at anything and see what I need to do. I'll share like that guy, I'll share my credit score online or whatever with everybody. So thanks for joining us today.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, you've been listening to Spend Life Well Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Spend Life Well Show. I'm Certified Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice, and you're listening to our show where we talk and apply biblical wisdom to your financial journey. We've been talking to Dennis Watson with the Texas DPS Credit Union here in Austin, Texas. And Dennis had to step out for another engagement. And there was a couple of things that we were talking about in the break. And he wanted to make sure that I mentioned that one of the areas that you need to do a lot of research on when you're thinking about buying a car, and that is making sure that if you're going to do a trade-in, that you really research the value of that trade-in, because you want to know what you're dealing with. Because a lot of times, car dealers will maybe give you more for your trade, but then not give you as much wiggle room on the purchase price of the new vehicle. So you need to kind of know what that is. You can go to NADA or Kelley Blue Book or something like that and kind of figure out what the trade-in value of that particular vehicle is. So I thought that was real important, and I wanted to make sure we shared that with those of you that are listening today. Making sure you're doing your research, and that's really what Dennis was stressing is before you even go talk to somebody about a purchase of a new car, you got to do some research. And the big thing there is, whether you buy or pay, whether you finance it or pay cash. We didn't have time to get into buying versus leasing. I know Dave Ramsey used to call that fleecing. So you get the gist of what I would think about that. But for some businesses and things, leasing can make financial sense. And just doing your research, doing your homework, know what your credit score is, know what your budget is going to be, and making sure you have a decent down payment for that. Because folks will finance it almost 100%, and that's not good because you're underwater immediately when you drive off the lot. So just be careful, cautious with that, and make sure you do your homework before that. And then once again, Dennis is a great guy, and he'll be glad to talk to you about different options that you have there and what it might cost you to borrow that money for a car. So one of the things was we were preparing for today's show. My staff in the office, because we are a show that applies biblical wisdom to personal finance, and we were kind of confused and said, well, there's not really scriptures in the Bible dealing with car buying. And I said, well, yeah, you're right, but they had chariots back then, so there were vehicles and things with that. But we really wanted to stress that you don't make, and that's why we had verse Psalm 62:10 today, and talking about your wealth. Don't make it the center of your life. And the same is true for buying a car. Don't make that vehicle the center of your life. I remember my first car that I ever had. It was one of those older, that's old now, they didn't make it, S10 pickup. It was red and it had a pinstripe down the side. I loved that car. That was awesome, and I looked really cool in it. But it became kind of the focal point for me, and that really is not how God wants us to view our wealth. So make sure that you got to remember that a car is a way to get from point A to point B. You may want to look like you're styling in that. That's your personal decision, but remember, it is just a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. And so keep that in mind as you go out and purchase your next vehicle. I wanted to pull up some notes here that let me find that here. Because it is, we've had another volatile week in the markets. The S&P 500 is now, as of this show, below less than 20% below the highs in year to date, actually. The NASDAQ still over 20% down for the year. That's more if you look at the peak back in November. Small cap stocks down about 18.8% as of this show. And that's not since the peak back in 2021. The big surprising one for everyone this year, and this is one of the reasons why this bear market is different than previous ones. In previous bear markets, most investors expected that bonds would stabilize their portfolio and prevent dramatic losses, because usually, in the exception of two bear markets in history since the Great Depression, only in two bear markets, and we've had 18 of them, only in two bear markets have we seen where bonds actually were slightly negative, not going up. And so this time is really different for us. where we see the longer term treasuries down well over 20%. We normally see bonds at least flatline or stabilize, or even go up in value, because that's generally the safer place. We're told historically is the place to go. Well, that hasn't been the case. So if you have not opened up your statements for the second quarter, you need to do so. You need to look at that and see what's going on um, with your portfolio. This is not the time to put our head in the sand and just hope it gets better. I've heard so many people that we've talked to in the last several weeks, maybe called into the show or whatever. They'll say, "Well, it always comes back." Well, it always has come back. But that's why on the commercials on television, you hear the guy talking really fast, like the FedEx man. Past performance is not indicative of future results. We don't know when the stock market will return to its previous highs, and that's the danger. People have that bias that they think things are just going to be like every time, and this time it may not. There's a lot of different things that are going on that we see that this bear market is different than others. So if you're interested in the top 5 sectors in the last 10 days, we've seen these. There's not saying that these are positive, but these are the top best performers. You look at consumer discretionary, that's really indicative of how those are stocks that are tracking companies or that measure or indicative of how much we're spending in the economy. We are still starting to see that spending slow down. We saw retail sales pick up, but the data, once you got under the covers of that data to look a little further into it, we saw that spending is up, but the number of transactions for those things have gone down. So what that means is that we're paying more for stuff we normally own, and we actually are slowing down the amount of things that we buy. Now that's really important. Technology was number 2, communication services number 3. Then we had healthcare, and real estate was making a little bit of a comeback in the indexes in the last 10 days. But you have to remember that of all the stocks that are on the NYSE, only 18% of them, are actually trading, their price is trading above their 200-day moving average. And that is a very important technical indicator that we use. And it's not a trigger for us, but it is a situation where we're concerned that we don't know that there's a bottom been put in yet with this particular bear market. So what should investors do in a situation like this? What do smart investors do in a bear market? We were reading some articles from the Wall Street Journal this last week, and there are certain things that savvy investors will do in a bear market. So, what are some of those things? Well, first of all, we know that you can't control the market, so we got to control what we do have control over things. Take control over your taxes. Are there any things that you wanted to sell but didn't because there's a lot of capital gain in there? You may want to look at those losers in your portfolio and maybe potentially book a tax loss on that. Or you can actually, even if it's a bunch, you can take that carry forward loss into future years on your taxes. Some advisors have been recommending that you convert some of your traditional IRAs over to Roth IRAs. Now, that's a very complicated discussion. You need to talk to a professional financial advisor and a tax advisor to help you with that, because we've seen a number of people try to do that on their own and they end up making a mistake. So be careful with that. Make sure that you're aware of the consequences of that Roth conversion and the mistakes that they were making. Not drastic or anything, but what they were doing is doing something along the lines of not realizing that because you pay income tax on that conversion to a Roth IRA, you put themselves in a higher tax bracket, or they're on Medicare and they put themselves into a higher Medicare Part B premium bracket. So they're end up going to pay more for their Medicare premiums next year because of that error. You want to make sure you're doing some sophisticated tax planning on those things. So smart investors are looking for those opportunities. And believe me, even though it seems like the entire market is going down, there are some sectors that are doing well. We looked at energy last week. Energy has been doing well, except for the last 15 to 20 days. For the year, energy, I think, is up as a sector is up about 28%. That really is the only positive sector in the economy, although it has pulled back quite dramatically in the last 3 weeks. So there's lots of things that could work or may work for you. I encourage you to talk to a financial advisor. You want to make sure that you're understanding those options. So when I was thinking about how to navigate this bear market, one of the things we do is we use technical analysis and active risk management. So we're going to look at the market a little bit differently than a typical financial advisor that's maybe buy and hold. And that's a conversation I'd love to have with you sometime, but you need to give us a call in our office, and you can call anytime. You can call right now in the studio, where we'll take your calls on the program. It's 254-282-0495. You'll be talking to one of our financial advisors. We won't put you on the air, but we may use your question for a future program. That's 254-282-0495. I want to go. We've had some questions this week from some of our listeners, and I want to make sure we answer those because they've been patient to wait on that answer. So here's a question related to our. We should have had asked this to Dennis, but this is a question from one of our listeners. He says, "I'm 2 years into a new car loan with 3 more years left on the loan, and I'm having a hard time making the monthly payment with everything getting so expensive. When is the best point to make a decision about whether to get rid of the car and buy something cheaper?" Well, I think, and this is from John in Northwest Austin. John, I think the thing to remember is um, you want to understand what your car is worth. So go to Kelley Blue Book or check out the NADA value of that. If you're a member of a credit union, sometimes they can help you do that research for you. And then you want to see, is what it's worth. I could sell it as a private seller or trade it in. Could I get my money out of that and pay off my note if I have something available to do that? So you want to make sure you're doing research there to understand what your options are with that. I'm sorry I didn't see that question until I got later in the program, and so want to make sure you do your research before you make a decision to sell. Now, there's a lot of folks out there that will just say sell and buy a clunker, but that might not be the best decision financially. You want to make sure that you don't put yourself into a worse position by selling the car, owing some money on that car, and then up having to try to find another car to get you back and forth to work. 254-282-0495. Another question here that we'll get to, and that is from Susan in Buda. She says, "I'm 10 to 12 years away from retirement. Have never worked with a financial planner. Is this a good time to start, or should I wait until I get closer to retirement?" Susan, please, 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 please contact a financial advisor. If you want to give us a call at that number I mentioned, you can give us a call at 254-452, 282-0495, 254-282-0495. Or I tell you, the best way to contact is go to our website. We've got our numbers on there because if you're driving, it might be hard to write down a number or remember a number. But our website is just simply spendlifewell.com. spendlifewell.com. So absolutely, yes, you need to talk to a financial advisor now, a long time ago. We encourage that folks talk to a financial advisor and start working with a financial advisor early in their saving years, because a lot of mistakes can be avoided if you start early and you start and get that advice. 10 to 12 years out from retirement, I think, is a great time. You still got time to make some adjustments if you need to. You've got time to figure out what you're going to need for retirement. And that's something that a good financial advisor can help you with. If you're not in the Central Texas area, anywhere from the Waco area down through San Marcos, you can go to our website and we'll direct you to a certified Kingdom advisor in your area, or you can go to kingdomadvisors.com and find a local Kingdom advisor, financial advisor in your area. So, Susan, that's a great question. Plan now, plan often, keep planning. You're going to keep planning all the way through retirement. And the only thing we can't plan is when the good Lord's going to call us home. But we can act like He's going to give us plenty of time. We just have to make sure that we're prepared for all those scenarios. So, great question, Susan. appreciate that. If you have a question for one of our financial advisors, you can send us an email at radio@spendlifewell.com. That's radio@spendlifewell.com. I want to close out today's program with just a little thought here. And that thought is about looking about the positive aspects of the environment that we're in, because there's plenty of bad news, right? There's plenty of bad news. And we have to remember that God's known this is coming. And we have a confidence in knowing that our Lord will provide for us in each and every situation. We just have to lift up our prayers to Him and ask Him to help us with the situation that we're in. So despite what you turn on see on the television or the radio, think the positive things that God's got this all figured out. He's got a plan for you. And if you're not involved in the church, I encourage you to find one this week and to go visit, worship a little bit. And that always makes me feel a little bit better in any situation. So folks, you've been listening to the Spend Life Well Show. I'm Certified Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice. I'm hopeful that today's program was helpful. You can contact us anytime on our website, spendlifewell.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week.